Hello everyone, how are you today? Before I answer that question, if I was wrong about James Gunn, let's talk about those DCU headlines. First of all, the rumor is out again that this movie's budget spiraled over 350 million. James Gunn, of course, understandably, has denied that. Is it true? Now, before I saw this wonderful, amazing teaser trailer, I thought this could be the cheapest budgeted Superman film since Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, because of Warner Brothers Discovery's financial kind of woes and problems. But I was forgetting one thing, that this film is an all or nothing situation for Warner Brothers Discovery. If it's a huge win, and by the way, it's broken a lot of records of views, and the social interactions over this teaser trailer have broken so many views. Over 250 million views for the teaser trailer on all platforms. I'm losing my voice already through excitement. That is huge. I think Deadpool and Wolverine had over 350, maybe even 400 million views, which is a lot, but that's a sequel thing. That's a pre-existing thing that's already really, really popular. So that's a great sign. That's the most viewed and talked about DCWB movie of all time. Obviously, during Superman 78's time, there was no social media. There was nowhere to talk about films, and you could only see trailers in the cinema, maybe some TV spots in ad breaks. So it was a different kind of parameter back then. And then during the build-up of Superman Returns 2006, in 2005, Twitter was only just starting. It was basically Facebook and MySpace and things like that. So, obviously we've got to be honest. But in terms of today, that's amazing. So let's go back to this budget situation. So did this film really cost over 350 million to make? So looking at the trailer, it looks like a very expensive movie. The VFX already, because obviously they've got around 8 months until they release this movie. They'll be working on the VFX right to the end. But they polish VFX for trailers. They don't just put things unfinished. Well, we've seen trailers do that before. Sonic, what was all that about? But what a great road to Sonic. What a great story for the Sonic movies ever since that moment. They're now planning a fourth Sonic movie. Big Sonic fan, really happy. Shout out to Jeff Fowler. I think he's done an amazing job. But anyway, if they have spent over 350 million on this movie, they're not going to want me and you to know that, because it puts more pressure on the box office, and if they only make a certain amount of money, they're going to be deemed the flop. So already people are going to go with this rumor. People now have decided that this film cost over 350 million. James Gunn has denied it. So can we, obviously he's not going to want to tell us the movie cost 350 million. That's a lot of money. When this rumor came out months and months ago, I thought it was nonsense leaked out by the studio themselves to try and convince us that they did spend a lot of money, that there's a lot of quality that's gone into this movie. That still could be the case. I don't know. But looking at this movie, it certainly looks like it's cost more than I ever thought it did. So I think you're definitely looking at 150 to maybe 200 million. Maybe James Gunn is good at making cheaper movies that look better than they actually are. But it does look like they've spent a lot of money on this film. Now, if this film miraculously makes over $1 billion, or makes, Force Awakens money like $2 billion, Spider-Man No Way Home, almost $2 billion at the global box office, that budget really doesn't matter. But I think what WB are doing here is going all or nothing on this movie. This is the big gamble. And if it doesn't work, Warner Brothers Discovery is up for sale and probably will be swallowed up by the biggest studio in Hollywood, Universal. Something as a WB fan all my life I don't want to see. I want WB to be independent. It's important. They've gone through such a hard time. Some of it is self-inflicted, some of it is because of the industry today. So I think it's a possibility that this movie cost that much money. It sounds like a ridiculous amount of money, but I do think that from looking at this teaser, and that wasn't my opinion before in terms of the budget, but looking at it now, by the way, it's fine to be wrong. You know, I just made guesses, right? But looking at that trailer, it looks like they absolutely have spent a lot of money on this movie. Now, Jeff Snyder, he's interesting. He's one of the previous Collider Bros, right? He does, I think he basically runs a business. He talks entertainment. He's pretty much a scooper. He claims James Gunn and DC Studios fired a lot of VFX people. Now, James is denying this. He said that what actually had happened, he replaced a lot of his pre-visualization people, his previous people. So, look, again, that's neither here nor there. But if James Gunn did fire a bunch of VFX people because they weren't up to his high standards, I'm sorry for anyone that loses their jobs in life, but this is a good thing. It means James Gunn is ruthless and has standards. And as a DC fan, as a fan of film and television and scripted entertainment, we want to see them being more ruthless. We want the end product to be the best that it can be. So again, this is not controversial and that's not a problem. But Jeff Snyder, again, has reared the discourse over the whole Pattinson situation, the whole Matt Reeves Batman situation. Will it remain to be its own thing, or will Robert Pattinson's Bruce Wayne, aka Batman, join the DCU? So when asked about the release of Bane, James Gunn was asked, are you concerned that I think it's that, is it Bane, whatever it is, right? That Bane movie, right? Are you concerned that it's so close to the release of the Batman? So he goes, well, you know, that movie, is it Bane? I can't even remember. Anyway, basically he said it doesn't really matter because this movie is part of the DCU and obviously the Batman 2 isn't part of the DCU. So from the outside looking in, this looks like nonsense from Jeff Snyder. Just to reiterate, Jeff Snyder has said that James Gunn wants Robert Pattinson's Batman to be part of the DCU. He's admitted that he was considering that situation, but he also wants to, you know, support hard R and Elseworld movies. So it's very, very interesting. And a lot of people will rightly ask, can you put Zack Snyder in that Elseworld universe as well? It's not looking like that's ever going to be a thing, by the way. The way I'm looking at it right now, because look, James Gunn has come into DC. He hasn't created this situation. He came in to find a pre-existing Batman as soon as he got there. Something he has to deal with because, as I said many times, having two Batmen is just not viable. I mean, maybe James Gunn can pull that off, but I just don't see how. So, according to Jeff Snyder, Gunn wants to bring Pattinson into the DCU, and basically Matt Reeves is resistant to that. It would be very difficult to have a grounded Batman universe in a fantastical DCU. Because when James Gunn announced Brave and the Bold, he was talking about a more fantastical Batman. So, it's interesting. So I think the way to deal with this discourse, if his Batman is in his Superman film, then this discourse finally goes away. And I think everyone can be happy. There are people who want Pattinson to be in the DCU. I just tonally, I just don't see how it works because Matt Reeves isn't going to be okay with a fantastical Batman. So you have to allow Matt Reeves to be in charge for him to agree to the whole of Batman, everything Batman in the DCU. I mean, they could be having negotiations about this right now. It's a very interesting situation because Matt Reeves is getting more and more involved in the DCU. Now, Grace Randolph and Jeff Snyder have both predicted eventually there will be an announcement that that Matt Reeves will have more to do, will become a big producer, will get a big role. Maybe he'll become another DC studio CEO. Something is cooking there. And this could be all part of the charm offensive to persuade Reeves to allow Robert Pattinson's Batman to be part of the DCU. But it is a difficult situation because there are ways of allowing that to work, but it couldn't be through the brave and the bold situation. So it's pretty obvious at this stage. Now, Boba Talks is a YouTuber I love. He's passionate. He's a genuine nerd. He's really passionate about the Batman universe, that Crime Saga staying separate to the DCU. And what I actually noticed was he was very happy when James Gunn says, well, you know, the Bane movie is separate to the Batman 2. So what's clear is that the Batman 2 will not be labelled as part of the DCU. So I think if Robert Pattinson's Batman does join the DCU, it will almost certainly be after the Batman 2. You couldn't wait till after a third movie. That's too long. James Gunn needs a Batman in the DCU. It would be very difficult, you know, to appease Batman fans if there isn't a Batman in the DCU. I mean, Batman fan, I'm a Batman fan. We're all greedy. We want to see him everywhere, right? But we can't. We want to see other characters as well. And I think a lot of people there'll be Plastic Man fans, there'll be Booster Gold fans, there'll be other fans who are going to say, but do you know what? What about our favourite characters? I know we're getting Booster Gold, don't know about Plastic Man, but there's, the lower graded characters who have never really got a looking in live action. Those fans are going to say, hang on a minute, 2 Batmen, and our characters can't even get 1 live action adaptation. So I don't think there's a reality. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I've been wrong about so much, and we're going to talk about that very shortly. But, I don't see 2 Batmen. I just don't see 2 Batmen. And it's clear that the development for Brave and the Bold has stalled. There is nothing going on with that movie. You would have thought, right, because everyone keeps on talking about these world finest rumours as well. You would have thought instead of, it is interesting, James Gunn said that Supergirl wasn't always meant to be the second movie in the DCU. And that's very interesting because I think Brave and the Bold originally was going to be the second movie in the DCU. And I think something changed with Matt Reeves. I don't know if he's managed to convince him. I don't know what's going on. But I think if Robert Pattinson's Batman crosses over to the DCU, it will certainly be after the Batman 2. I think if we don't see James Gunn's Batman surprise us in Superman, then I think there's a bigger chance of Robert Pattinson's Batman crossing over after the Batman 2. And that's what people like Boba have got to understand. Just because James Gunn says, oh, well, the Batman 2 isn't part of the DCU. No. It looks like it probably won't be. But after that, it's all up for grabs. And this is what people have got to understand. Because I love DC, but when it comes to the whole, should Pattinson be in the DCU or should be in his own universe, I don't have a strong opinion, right? But I do feel because it's grounded, and if you're putting him in this fantastical universe, it could be difficult. It's also a bit weird to grab someone from another universe and just throw them in there. It's interesting. It's an interesting situation. But it will be very, very interesting if we see a DCU Batman in this Superman movie. Because I think originally that was going to happen. Now, in Creature Commandos, which I don't have access to, but thanks to social media spoiling me, we got a version of Wally West, the Wally West Flash. He was another character tied to a stake, dying, right, in that flash forward. So, this is interesting. So, as I predicted at the time, I thought they may rest Barry Allen for the DCU and give us Wally West, and it looks like James Gunn is going with Wally West, and I'm absolutely here for that as well. So let's answer the question. Let's answer this question. Was I wrong about James Gunn? Well, I've been saying a lot of things. I've tried to be on the fence and I've tried to be balanced, but I've also said, I also had a concern that maybe this film, the hype coming for this film, was from the same DC fans that were shilling the Flash movie but never went to cinemas to see the movie. Because there's this whole Grace Randolph thing, isn't there? You know, there's DC fans on the internet, then there's no DC fans in the movie theatre. So I hope this is not the case this time. You know, over 250 million views on all platforms for this teaser trailer would say there's a huge general audience interest in this movie. Something I didn't think was going to happen, but it did. I was wrong. That's okay. So was I wrong about James Gunn? Well, I've had doubts over James Gunn running DC Studios. I've had doubts about James Gunn making a Superman movie. But from what I see from this trailer, and I can only judge from this trailer, James Gunn seems to understand Superman. It's interesting that we begin with Superman in a weakened state. Now, I spoke yesterday about my big Ultraman theory, and I absolutely do believe that all throughout this film, most of this film, Superman is in a weakened state. He is dying from the same effects of the sun, like he is in All-Star Superman, basically. And I think that's the case in this movie. It's why he's putting his boots on slowly. It's why he's saying one last goodbye to Lois Lane before he goes back outside to join with his metahuman friends to fight whatever they're fighting. Because people have said, why is he just sitting there while all hell's breaking loose? That's why. That's obvious. James Gunn has also said that most of what we saw in that teaser is at the beginning of the movie. There's only a couple of bits near kind of the third act. Very, very interesting. But by looking at the trailer, that's obvious already from everything that we've learned about this movie. So, was I wrong about James Gunn? Well, in terms of this teaser trailer and what I saw, yes, I was kind of wrong about James Gunn. It's clear he can pull off Superman to a point. But again, it's only a teaser. I'm not going to get carried away. I'm not going to start shilling him, right? But I like what he's given us so far. This trailer is hinting that James Gunn may actually know what he's doing. Now, he does have a love and respect for Superman. But if he kills Superman off, as I said in the other video, if he kills Superman off and Supergirl takes on his mantle, he doesn't get it and I won't be on board. I want a Superman to be part of a DCU, a DC universe. Superman is my favourite character in fiction, as you all know. And it would be absolutely outrageous because, as everyone's saying, this is a big movie for WB, for DC, but the industry on a whole. Because it was Superman 78 that really saved, and Star Wars A New Hope, that really saved Hollywood at that time. Fewer people were going to cinemas. People were fed up of going to see anti-heroes. So, can this Superman film do the same for New Hollywood? We can only hope. I mean, I was rewatching Man of Steel again. I won't allow any bum to say anything against Man of Steel. It's a great movie, but it's a ballsy movie. The cojones on Nolan, Goyer and Snyder. They made their own movie that doesn't do what James Gunn's movie seems to do in this trailer, which is give you a lot of Superman 78 nostalgia. But we did have a lot of nostalgia for one live action adaptation in Man of Steel, and it's Smallville. Because at that time, Smallville was deemed like the 21st century's Superman 78. And when you look at how many, Superman fans Smallville created, you can understand that. We have a Whitney Fordham. In Smallville, it's Whitney Fordman. Of course, we have the bus crashing into the river, like Lex's car crashes in the pilot into the river. Jonathan Kent has a wall of weird. So there's so many Smallville Easter eggs if you watch Man of Steel properly. But what I love about Man of Steel, it absolutely does its own thing. It says we don't want the S-shield on the cape, right? I love it. I love seeing the S-shield on the cape, right? I mean, it doesn't anger me that they didn't have it on there, but they did their own thing. They created their own Superman costume, right? I think the Man of Steel costume is outstanding. There's elements of Cornsworth's costume I'm really getting to love now. and I'm getting used to that costume. On location, it looked absolutely terrible, but in the trailer, it looks a lot better. So I'm not hating on it, and I'm not disliking it as much as I did at the time. It's all about getting used to the new look. It's a bit like getting used to the new interior of the TARDIS in Doctor Who. It does take getting used to. So yeah, I do think I was, let's just say, a little bit wrong about James Gunn if I'm judging on this teaser trailer. But all my concerns are still out there. I'm still concerned that Superman gets killed off in this movie. I'm sticking with that theory, and we'll see what happens. I'm a little bit nervous about this film because we've only seen a teaser trailer. But that trailer has got me so excited for this film. So please keep me alive until at least I can see that film, because that's all I can think about right now. So let's move away from the DCU just for a moment. Well, this will be the final portion of the video. Let's talk about James Bond, Eon Productions, and the discourse between Eon and Amazon MGM. The worst thing that happened, I think it was a very sad day when Amazon bought MGM Studios. MGM was one of the kingmakers of the beginning, the foundations of Hollywood in the late 20s and the 30s and 40s, and even 50s and 60s. There was a time when MGM was the biggest studio in Hollywood, and to see it bought by Amazon, a streaming service basically, a shopping company, an online shopping company, was a very, very sad day. Now, I told you, I predicted after No Time to Die, which I thought is just a movie that just runs on and on for nearly 3 hours with great cinematography and music, but it's not a very good Bond film. You know, the decisions for that movie were made by Daniel Craig. It became very, very current day. The director was slaughtering Roger Moore's Bond and Sean Connery's Bond and saying a lot of, let's just say, current day things. So it was a disaster, wasn't it? Waller-Bridge rewrote that movie. Well, enough said. A feminist rewriting a Bond movie, rather problematic. The whole movie, apart from the music, apart from the cinematography and the action, simply doesn't work. The story and the characters, it don't work, including Bond. They made Bond into something that wasn't Bond. I love Casino Royale. I love The Dark Knight. I'm sorry, I mean Skyfall. Skyfall's just the Dark Knight ripoff, by the way, but it's a wonderful movie. But ever since Cubby Broccoli has died, Barbara Broccoli and her, is it stepbrother, half-brother, whatever, Michael G. Wilson, haven't been consistent with Bond movies. And, I mean, they've made some great Bond movies, and they've made some in-the-middle Bond movies, and, you know, generally bad Bond movies. So they haven't been as consistent as her father, Cubby Broccoli. Those issues began before Amazon MGM bought MGM and Eon. It's all part of the same thing. So basically, the discourse between Broccoli and Wilson and Amazon MGM is this. Amazon MGM predictably want to turn Bond into the MCU. They want loads of like streaming show spin-offs and different movies. Broccoli and Wilson fundamentally don't want this. It's clear that Broccoli and Wilson want to make one Bond film every 3 to 5 years like they've always done, right? But Amazon MGM haven't bought MGM just to let all the properties that they own, all the properties that they own grow stagnant. So this is the modern thing now. Franchises, spin-offs, movies every year. That's what they want. But Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson are old school, and they don't want to do that. So where do I sit here? I mean, look, creatively, I think the wrong people are in charge of Bond, in Broccoli and Wilson. I think we need new creatives there, but they have a stranglehold on the property. They can't just get rid of them, right? Amazon MGM can't get rid of them, but creatively, Bond has already got a problem. Even before Amazon MGM got involved, right? But I predicted that Broccoli and Wilson would fall out from the very beginning. But they've been falling out. They have been falling out from the very beginning, as I predicted, but secretly. For the first time, Barbara Broccoli has, come out publicly calling them fucking idiots or whatever she said. She was very disparaging about Amazon MGM. So it's a big problem now. What's going to happen? Is Barbara and Michael going to quit? I don't know. So Hollywood Reporter predicted some Bond. I forgot his name now. But I don't like the look of him, by the way, and that's not who I want to be Bond. He doesn't look intimidating, but so Bond, like, as I say, the creative choices behind Bond are wrong anyway, away from Amazon MGM. So, because Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson are not getting any younger, they're going to have to retire eventually. They're fighting. Look, she's fighting for her father's legacy. So I don't think she's just going to take a retirement package. Same with Michael, Michael loved Cubby very much. So I don't see them walking away. They're going to fight for the integrity of Bond. But they sold out the integrity of Bond when they decided to make a current day Bond movie and allow a director allegedly accused of harassment or whatever he was accused of, starting to slaughter, Roger Moore and Sean Connery and past Bond. Everything is a product of its own time, right? And that's okay. It's okay to be a product of your own time. I used to have certain views as a youngster, and I don't have those views anymore through being educated. That's what being a product of your own time is about. So we don't judge each other for what we said 20 years ago, right? We admit that maybe we had some wrong think, and we move on. And that's okay. We don't dig ourselves a hole. We don't just be stubborn and stick to our dumb positions that we had 20 years ago. But anyway, so this is a checkmate situation. So apparently now the next Bond movie has been delayed. But listen, I can assure you that this has been a problem from the moment Amazon was bought. MGM was bought by Amazon. This has been a problem. I predicted this. I told you this on my Twitter, and I told you this on videos here on my YouTube platform. So this is utterly predictable to me. The timing is a little bit of a surprise. I didn't expect them to come out. I didn't expect Barbara Broccoli to come out. But she's so desperate, she's trying to get public support. She wants us, the public, to take her side and go against Amazon MGM. Here's the problem, Babs. I no more trust you and Michael G. Wilson than I do Amazon MGM. I think Bond is absolutely in the wrong hands, and I think it's over. But we've got some great memories, so if I ever miss James Bond, I can just watch the older films. It's not a big deal. And I think the environment that entertainment is in right now, I don't think is a good environment to make Bond films, because they're gonna be made under the restrictions and parameters we have today. James Bond is a good-looking dude who uses women, and likes to have sex and drink and even smoke. That's who he is. And he does anything to get the job done, and he's a ruthless character. That is who James Bond is. Once you attempt to change him, and they've tried to change him, instead of sleeping with lots of women in a film, they reduced the Bond girls down to 2 main Bond girls. And I think this started with, maybe, was it The Living Daylights and License to Kill? Right, with the Timothy Dalton movies, because they tried to become a little bit more, representative of the times we live in. James Bond can't be representative of the times we live in. I think James Bond should be stuck in the past. I spoke about this with Superman as well. Superman is suited period pieces because he's that kind of hero. And we'll see if James Gunn can pull off a modern day Superman. But I think if you want James Bond to work with a modern day audience, maybe it's better that he has adventures in the 50s, maybe even the 40s and the 60s, even the 70s and 80s, but keep him out of modern day. Maybe that's the way you can make a James Bond for a modern audience. I'm not too sure. But right now, we're not going to be seeing James Bond anytime soon. And I reckon that Amazon MGM don't want the guy that Broccoli and Wilson want. I think Amazon MGM may want a black guy, a diverse actor to play Bond. That wouldn't surprise me either. So it's all a mess. You cannot make a James Bond film. You cannot have a James Bond franchise under modern constraints and parameters. It's just not going to work. But what about this idea of spin-offs? Now I told you many moons ago that I had this big idea for a James Bond franchise where we have a young James Bond series that's connected to the movies. So really, the young James Bond is a prequel to my movie series that I would start as well. So I'd give him this big origin story. His parents are murdered in front of him. He goes on the run as a young boy in the series. In the series, he's on the run and he has adventures at the same time and helps people and does things, all bonding. It will be very, very Smallville kind of thing. And then everything that happens in the Bond series, and the Bond series will be active as a spin-off while they do the movies as well. And maybe it is time. I mean, they've already rebooted him once, right? And I think maybe it may be a good idea to reboot him again. So I think like a young James Bond spin-off on Amazon, the streaming service, would be great. I don't think it's a big deal. Like, Broccoli and Wilson don't want the spin-offs. I don't think having spin-offs is the problem. It's having good spin-offs. If you can have good spin-offs, it's fine. So, but Broccoli and Wilson are opposed to all of this, right? That whole James Bond reality show they did on Amazon was shit. That's a shit idea. I don't want to see shit like that. I want to see great. I think spin-offs can work if they're good. Knots Landing spun off from Dallas, one of the biggest spin-offs of all time, right? Up there with the Buffy spin, the Angel spin-off from Buffy. Spin-offs are not a problem if they're great spin-offs. Nothing's a problem if it's done in good taste and to entertain people. And that's the point. So right now, Bond is in a deep hole and we may never see a Bond movie again. And how sad is that? And we may never see a Bond movie in our lifetimes.